What's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome to the quarterback and tight end rankings for Week 13. We got to get going fast. I'm covering two positions in this video, and we're dropping all of our rankings on Thursday morning a lot quicker than we normally do. But with 3 Thursday games this week, we got to get that information out to you right away so you can make the best decisions possible. So let's get rolling right away. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into our quarterbacks first. Patrick Mahomes at number 1. He gets the Oakland Raiders, a team that Sam Darnold walked all over last week. If Sam Darnold can do it, Patrick Mahomes can do it. Lamar Jackson at number 2. Love me some Lamar Jackson. However, this week against San Francisco, a little bit tougher of a matchup than what Patrick Mahomes has, so I've got Mahomes right above him. Drew Brees at number 3, going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons, obviously, last week got torched by Jameis Winston. They're giving up 20 points per game to opposing quarterbacks as well. Drew Brees looking to have a big day as well this Thursday. Aaron Rodgers at number 4. Got a little bit of flack for this call last week. I had him as a sit last week. He didn't even come close to being a start. So one of the calls that I was able to nail last week was Aaron Rodgers, bouncing out on him last week, but a big performance coming back. They got embarrassed by San Francisco. They're looking to bounce back, have a big week this week against the Giants, giving up the 9th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is going to have himself a day. Russell Wilson at number 5. Of course, the talented and consistent Russell Wilson. We're going to roll him out there. He is a top 5 quarterback basically every single week. Jameis Winston at number 6. Winston is the volume guy. He's going to throw a couple of interceptions here or there. 6 straight 300-yard passing games, though. Another one possibly coming up this week against Jacksonville. Kyler Murray at number 7. He gets a Los Angeles Rams defense this week that got burnt by Lamar Jackson last week. Now, I'm not saying Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson are the same quarterback, but being those dual threat type of quarterbacks, guys that can beat you through the air or on the ground, he's definitely set up to have some success this week because Lamar Jackson was uncontained last week against the Rams. Definitely see Murray being a star. And, of course, he's the quarterback 6 right now, a very sneaky quarterback 6. A lot of people don't really realize that. Sam Darnold at number 8. 100% going with him this week. Love this play. Starting him as many times or as many leagues as I can against Cincinnati. He's been the quarterback 2 the last 2 weeks, and Cincinnati gives up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. With Nick Foles, going to put him as a start against Tampa Bay. Yes, Tampa Bay did a very good job against Matt Ryan last week, but I'm still going to roll with Nick Foles this week. Tampa Bay, even after a good performance last week, still allowing the 2nd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Dak Prescott coming in at number 10. Don't love the upside this week for him, so that's why I've got him a little bit lower. I've had a few questions about him. Quite honestly, I think this is a really good spot for him this week because he'll still probably be a decently safe play. I don't think he was completely shut down by New England last week. I do, however, believe the weather played a lot of that poor performance. I think he would have been a little bit better if it hadn't been for the weather last week. Can see him being pretty good against Buffalo, but again, floor. We're looking for the floor here. If you need a lot of upside, Dak Prescott might not be your play this week. Josh Allen at number 11 against Dallas. These two guys right next to each other. He probably has a little bit more upside. He's been the quarterback 2 since week 7. He even had a pretty decent game last week and one that should have been pretty tough. Allen showed that he's definitely producing quarterback 1 numbers. Carson Wentz at number 12. Another one that I called last week as a sit that I didn't love. Giving some love to this week, bouncing back against Miami. Deshaun Watson at 13. Now, this is probably one that is going to surprise quite a few of you. If you own Deshaun Watson, more than likely you are playing Deshaun Watson because you're not going to own any of these other guys that are probably above them, and none of these guys that are above them besides maybe Darnold, maybe Foles are going to be guys that you can pick up and stream. So if you own Watson, you are still going to play him. I still have him as a start. I still think he can get to those 18 fantasy points going up against New England, but the game is in Houston. I think that favors him a little bit more, so I'm still going to have him as a start just outside of that QB1 territory. However, Jared Goff at 14, also a bounce back week for this guy. I don't know how he couldn't bounce back this week, getting Arizona, who's giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And just keep this in mind, he hasn't thrown a touchdown in 3 weeks. That's right. In the month of November, Jared Goff has not thrown a touchdown. Hard to believe that. Matt Ryan at number 15, after a really poor performance last week, he just hasn't looked the same. I think he's missing a little bit of that upside right now. I don't know if he's still dealing with some lingering effects of that injury, but I just am not excited to have him in my lineup unless I need to do it. Same thing this week, possibly some limited upside. Minnesota, Kirk Cousins. I love Kirk Cousins. However, again, another week where I'm looking at a possible floor of 18. It's going to be really close for some of these guys. For Kirk Cousins, again, a really deep week. I've got him there at 16. I don't love the matchup. They're going to Seattle. I still think he has a good possibility. I think one thing that I'm keeping an eye on too, Cousins and Ryan are basically interchangeable, and you could, if you wanted to, make an argument to put Cousins above of Goff if you wanted to. So you could go as high as 14. Depends on how you feel about him. Ryan Tannehill at number 17. I'm not sitting the guy again. I had him as a sit last week. Completely proved me wrong. Definitely not doing it again moving forward. He's been very, very good. Since taking over as a starter in week 6, he's the quarterback 11, and he's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. Tom Brady at 18. Don't love him this week. Dealing with an injury possibly a little bit. Just looked off, even with the weather, looked off last week. So I'm staying back, and honestly, I had him as a sit this week because of that. I think he's going to be limping the rest of the season. For fantasy owners, I think he could be a decent play, but he's not going to have upside for you very often. Jacoby Brissett at number 19 against Tennessee. Another thing with him too, didn't look fully healthy last week. They played Houston last week. They showed several shots of that knee that he had issues with. He had a huge brace on it. He moved all right every once in a while. He had a couple of running plays where he looked okay, but I just, again, don't feel like he's fully healthy. Going to rely on the running game again this week. And at number 20, Baker Mayfield, just slipping him in there at the back end. However, don't love him this week. The Steelers defense has only allowed 2 200-yard passing games in the last 8 games. So that defense has been really, really good, especially at home. So there you go. Those are our top 20 quarterbacks. So now that we're done with quarterbacks, let's go ahead and move on to our tight ends. At the very top, our man Travis Kelce, the tight end 1, have him there again this week going up against Oakland. I've got Waller at 4. I've got Kelce at 1. But the thing is with these two teams, they are both giving up a ton of fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. They're 5th and 6th in terms of most fantasy points. Both of these guys can ball out. Both of them can have huge games. Kelce I have just having a little bit of a bigger game. Zach Ertz, again, going up against Miami this week. We are going to roll with Zach Ertz. Again, he was tight end 1 last week. That's where I had him. That's where he ended up finishing. Big week for him. Again, or George Kittle at number 3. Almost skipped over George Kittle there. My bad, George. Anyway, with George Kittle, I ended up putting him all the way up at tight end 4 last week. He had a really good week, but I was really concerned because it came out really early in the morning that he was playing on a broken ankle. He was supposed to be active, then they said he might not be active, then he would, but he's playing on a broken ankle. So I was really worried about him in that matchup, and boy, did he look fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and keep him up there while he's playing like that. In this matchup, especially for Jimmy Garoppolo, he's going to have to rely on George Kittle. Darren Waller, mentioned him a second ago. Love him. Love his upside this week. Number 5, Hunter Henry. Love me some Hunter Henry. I think he's a safe play this week, but I think we just limit what we want in terms of the ceiling from him. Again, Denver's pass defense has been pretty good, so maybe not a great ceiling for Hunter Henry this week. Number 6, Mark Andrews. Love me some Mark Andrews, the number 1 target. Unfortunately, he's number 1 target for Lamar Jackson. Unfortunately, except for last week when he didn't score a whole lot. I mean, he had a couple of catches, but we really want to see a little bit more volume. He didn't have that volume that he's had in weeks past, but I think he still continues to be the number 1 option for Lamar Jackson, especially in this game. Lamar Jackson not going to have nearly as easy as a game as he did last week. Mark Andrews is going to be a factor for him. Gerald Everett at number 7. I want to put him higher. He's getting Arizona. Arizona's giving up the most fantasy points per game to tight ends by quite a few points. I mean, the gap between 1 and 2, Arizona and that next closest team is about 5 5 points. So it's a pretty big gap for Gerald Everett, or for the difference between 1 and 2 in tight ends, and Gerald Everett could 100% take that over this week. However, keep in mind he dealt with a knee injury this past week. Tyler Higbee, the name to keep an eye on. If Everett can't go, then Higbee is a streaming option for us. Number 8, Ryan Griffin. I gave him some decent love last week. Should have given him a little bit more love. Now, he did basically bail out owners with a touchdown, and that's what he's going to do. But because of that, that's why I've got him at number 8 this week against Cincinnati. Cincinnati has the 9th most red zone receptions, or is giving up the 9th most red zone receptions, and the 8th most red zone targets to opposing tight ends. A lot of touchdown upside for Ryan Griffin this week. Greg Olsen coming in at number 9. Another matchup I don't love, but I don't hate it either. He's been performing a little bit better. It looked like there for a while with Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen was basically going to be a loss for Greg Olsen, and he wasn't going to do anything while he was there at quarterback. However, he's been playing a little bit better. So got Olsen there right inside the top 10 this week. Jared Cook coming in at number 10. Wanted to move him a little bit higher as well. He's been playing great. Touchdowns in 4 of the last 5. Big plays since week 5. He's averaging over 13 yards per reception. I think there's going to be a lot of the wide receivers this week for New Orleans, a lot of the running backs for New Orleans, especially if they can get out and get the lead on Atlanta early, maybe a lot of Latavius Murray this week. So I'm just worried about Jared Cook's volume. I definitely think he has touchdown upside, but the volume is why I've got him a little bit lower. I could definitely see him going up all the way to 7, though. So there's a little bit of a range for Jared Cook I could see this week. Jack Doyle coming in at number 11. No Eric Ebron. Good news for Jack Doyle. Jacob Hollister at number 12 was going to have another solid week last week, but Russell Wilson decided to throw the ball 5 feet over his head in the back of the end zone. So unfortunately, he didn't get that touchdown last week. Got him as a tight end 1 this week at number 12. Dallas Goedert at number 7. I've been playing with this one a little bit back and forth. I had him a little bit lower, moved him a little bit higher, dropped him here to number 13. I'm going to leave him right here for right now. I could see him going a little bit higher. Again, it is Miami that they are playing, but it's Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, we're living in his world. That's what Dallas Goedert does. Goedert's got to find the end zone to be a really good option. That's why I had him listed as a sit, but I've got him just above Kyle Rudolph because of the potential. I think Kyle Rudolph is a little bit safer if Adam Thielen is out, and that's why I have Rudolph at 14, because we're still waiting on Thielen as well. He did not practice on Wednesday. When is he going to be ready to roll? We don't know that yet. He is a really good option, however, if Thielen is out again. I've got him at 14. He could make a little bit of a jump as well. Dawson Knox at 15. Also had him listed as a start. I think Josh Allen's going to be looking his way quite a bit this week. Noah Fant, don't love him this week. I want to see him get some better matchups, though, because he's been Allen's favorite target since Allen took over at quarterback outside of Courtland Sutton. But I'm not loving the opportunity for him this week either. Vance McDonald at number 17. Part of this hinges on what's going to happen with the wide receivers as well. Some injuries there at the wide receiver position. Keep an eye on the Steelers. Vance McDonald could get a couple of bumps up in my rankings by the time kickoff gets here on Sunday. Jonnu Smith at number 18. I want to put him higher, but honestly, outside of a couple of really good performances, he hasn't done a whole lot. So I'm not really going to be relying on him here in week 18, which will probably be a tough matchup for him. Mike Gesicki, kind of another up and down. Never know when it's going to happen. If you play him, great, but expect a 0 and hope for a touchdown. That's why I got him at 20. And Darren Fells would like to see him start finding the end zone a little bit more. He was all the way up to tight end 6 at one point, but he continues to drop just because he hasn't done anything in a few weeks now. But I've got him at 20 this week. And there you have it. All of the rankings for quarterbacks and tight ends, the top 20 for each of them. The one thing I want to keep in mind as well, whatever tight end plays for the New York Giants, okay, that's what I really need to keep my eye on, because if it's Evan Ingram, I'm going to have him decently high. If it's Rhett Ellison, maybe somewhere in the middle. Here's the thing. We're all over the place. That's why I don't have anybody in there right now, because I've got some time to make that decision. I don't want to put him in there. I talked about that position more on the start and sit video and even the waiver wire video. So go check out those videos if you need to have a little bit more information on what we are doing with that position this week. The Caden Smith from the New York Giants is kind of that sleeper pick this week. So we're going to keep an eye on him as well. If Ellison and Ingram can't go, then he's the guy. At that point there, I'm probably putting him right in front of Kyle Rudolph, giving him about a QB 14, or excuse me, a tight end 14 designation. So the one thing that we need to keep our eye on there, I got to get one of those guys into the rankings, but I'm not going to do that until I hear more about what's going to happen. Headliner Nation, there you go. 40 names, running through them really quick, getting you ready to set your lineups. 3 games on Thursday. Then, of course, if you watch this after Thursday, that's just fine. However, just wanted to get this information out as quickly as we could this week. Hey, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, subscribe to the channel, leave your questions below. More importantly, though, if you could compare the fantasy headliners to a Thanksgiving Day food, what would it be and why? Let me know in the comments below. I want to see how many of you actually watched the entire video all the way through. Let me know in the comments below. What would you compare? What Thanksgiving Day meal, food, whatever you want to say, would you compare to the fantasy headliners and why? Headliner Nation, thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great weekend. Best of luck. We'll catch you on the live show on Saturday night. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.